In the mid-1970s, Anchorage was a city where blue-collar workers could pocket $1,200 a week. Real estate prices doubled in just a few years, and bars outnumbered grocery stores. Oil money flooded in overnight, triggering a population explosion and turning quiet neighborhoods into chaotic, mud-splattered boomtowns. But beneath the promise of riches, everything, housing, safety, even daylight, was suddenly scarce. What did it really take to survive the most extreme decade in Alaska's history? Construction on the Trans-Alaska Pipeline began in 1974, and from the start, the project defied imagination. Crews faced the task of building an 800-mile steel artery across some of the most unforgiving terrain on the continent, stretching from the icy oil fields of Prudhoe Bay, winding over mountain ranges, through boreal forest, across rivers, and finally reaching the tidewater port of Valdez. The pipeline did not just cut a straight path. It snaked through earthquake zones, over permafrost that could buckle steel, and across land that was frozen solid half the year. To keep the oil flowing, engineers invented new ways to outsmart the Arctic. In sections where the ground would thaw and refreeze, they raised the pipe on stilts to prevent melting the permafrost below. At river crossings and avalanche-prone passes, the work demanded custom-built bridges and, in some cases, even aerial tramways to ferry pipe over deep snow. Every mile brought a new problem to solve, from minus 40 degrees cold to swarms of mosquitoes in the summer. The operation ran around the clock. More than 30 construction camps dotted the route, each a self-contained world with kitchens, bunkhouses, and repair shops. Thousands of workers rotated through these camps, flown in for weeks at a time, living in a rhythm dictated by the relentless pace of the build. The pipeline's backbone took shape day and night, in blizzards and midnight sun, until the final weld was made in May 1977. For those on the ground, the scale was staggering, an engineering feat that changed Alaska forever. A paycheck from Alyeska Pipeline Service Company in 1975 could leave a person stunned. Laborers pulled in $1,000 to $1,500 every week, more than most doctors in the lower 48, and 5 times what many had earned back home. For welders, foremen, and equipment operators, pay ran even higher. The pipeline did not just offer a job, it dangled instant prosperity. At the height of construction, 28,000 people worked directly on the line, each with a shot at a windfall. One worker joked in an oral history, "You could walk off a plane in Anchorage with nothing but a duffel bag and be flush by Friday." Others mailed home pay stubs as proof, their families in disbelief at the sums. Alyeska's name became shorthand for easy money. The company's logo showed up everywhere, on jackets, lunch pails, even tattooed on arms. "You want to get rich? Go north," read a classified ad in a 1976 Anchorage Daily News. The promise of a fat paycheck set off a stampede. Men and women from Texas, Michigan, California, every state sent fortune seekers north. Anchorage's airport turned into a revolving door, with newcomers arriving faster than the city could count them. The first oil flowed on June 20, 1977, but the gold rush had started long before. Wages poured into bars, car dealerships, and real estate offices, fueling a boom that would soon overwhelm the city's housing and services. The money was real, and so was the chaos that followed. Anchorage in the mid-1970s felt like a city bursting at the seams. The population rocketed from under 50,000 to more than 170,000 in a single decade, and the scramble for shelter turned daily life into a test of patience and luck. New arrivals stepped off planes and found themselves in a housing free for all. Three-bedroom homes that cost $45,000 at the start of the decade soared to $150,000 by 1979. Even with fat pipeline paychecks, finding a place to sleep was a challenge. Trailer parks mushroomed on the city's fringes, their gravel lots packed tight with recreational vehicles and single-wides. Motels along Spennard and Northern Lights overflowed, sometimes cramming whole families into a single room. In the coldest months, stories surfaced of workers bunking in cars or converted garages just to stay near the action. For many, home was wherever they could find four walls and a heater. One woman, left behind while her husband worked the line, juggled 2 jobs and 3 kids in a borrowed trailer, waiting months for a permanent address. The city's promise of prosperity came with a price: crowded quarters, restless nights, and the constant uncertainty of where you would land next. Spennard in the 1970s pulsed with the kind of energy that only sudden money can buy. Bars lined the avenue, each one louder than the next, their neon signs burning through the winter dark. At Chilkoot Charlie's, pipeline workers packed the floor, their pockets heavy with fresh pay. Stories floated of bartenders wheeling cash to the bank in shopping carts. On payday weekends, charter flights from the North Slope unloaded crowds ready to spend: beer, steaks, jukebox songs, and sometimes a few rounds in the parking lot. In some neighborhoods, bars outnumbered grocery stores 2 to 1. The city's police blotter swelled as violent crime tripled over the decade. Brawls and break-ins became part of the Anchorage soundtrack. Meanwhile, the cost of daily life kept climbing. A gallon of milk could set you back $2, double what it cost in Seattle. Gas hovered around 70 cents, more expensive than in many mainland cities, even with oil flowing just up the road. Groceries arrived by plane, their prices rising with every mile north. For every night of celebration, there were families stretched thin, and spouses waiting at home, counting the hours until the next flight brought their partner back, or did not. Winter in Anchorage pressed in from all sides. Most days in December barely scraped together 6 hours of daylight, with the sun barely clearing the horizon before sinking again. Temperatures of -20 weren't rare. They were routine. Stepping outside meant facing air so cold it stung your lungs, ice fog swirling around bundled figures hurrying to start cars. Block heaters became lifelines, and every driveway was strung with orange extension cords, engines plugged in overnight to keep them from freezing solid. Forgetting to plug in meant risking a dead battery and a car that would not budge until spring. Getting anywhere beyond city limits required a bush plane or a snowmobile. Roads could vanish under drifts, and a trip to a remote village might depend on a single weekly flight, if the weather held. In these conditions, routines took on a survival edge. Parents packed emergency kits in every vehicle: flares, blankets, chocolate bars, candles. Kids learned early how to check for frostbite and keep an eye out for moose wandering into backyards. Cabin fever was real. By February, even the most stoic souls grew restless, counting the days until the first hint of spring. Yet for many, the extremes became a badge of honor. Anchorage's Iditarod, launched in 1973, turned the city's winter hardship into a celebration, with mushers and dogs racing across a landscape that demanded respect. Here, survival was not just about braving the cold, it was about mastering it every single day. December 1971 marked a turning point for Alaska. The Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act transferred 44 million acres, nearly the size of Wisconsin, from federal hands to 12 regional and over 200 village Native corporations. For Alaska Native leaders, The law was both a hard-won recognition and a gamble. Roy Hundorf, a Cook Inlet region leader, put it plainly. We became shareholders, not just stewards. The act offered a stake in Alaska's future, but it also meant trading ancestral hunting grounds for corporate shares and votes, choices that would echo for generations. Oil money soon flooded the state. By 1976, lawmakers established the Permanent Fund, setting aside a share of oil profits for the future. The idea was to create lasting wealth, but the reality was uneven. While Anchorage and the pipeline corridor prospered, many native villages saw little change. Traditional ways of life were disrupted, and social problems grew as jobs and cash bypassed remote communities. That same year, the Anchorage Daily News exposed pipeline cost overruns and political deals, earning a Pulitzer Prize. Hospitals and emergency services, especially in rural areas, struggled to keep pace. The promise of prosperity brought new questions about who truly controlled Alaska's future. Anchorage's pipeline boom echoes today in every debate over resource extraction and rapid growth. The city's wild transformation set a precedent. Prosperity can arrive overnight, but stability and justice demand vigilance. Alaska still walks that tightrope. What would you choose if the next boom came to your backyard?